Danvers School Committee meeting. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, tonight as we come off the election, we will have a school committee reorganization, so I will serve as the temporary chair. And before we begin that process, I just want to read our public schools mission statement. We are a district that creates a supportive environment where all learners thrive. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast on Danvers Community Access Television, right? And if anyone in the audience is recording the proceedings, just please let us know. Okay, thank you very much. With that being said, we will start the reorganization of the school committee. And the next piece right now will be determining the chair. So nominations for chair, the floor is open.
I nominate Mike Shannon for chair. Did I jump ahead?
No, you did exactly what he asked you to do. I appreciate that, but I'd like to give somebody else a shot at it too if they're open for that.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Sean Doherty for chair.
I'll second that nomination.
Any discussion?
I think everyone should take a shot at it. And Sean's been here for a while, and you know I'd love to see him take on the role.
Any further discussion? With that being said, let's take a vote. All those for Sean Doherty becoming the chair of the school committee for this year, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, congratulations, Sean. You will be our chair for this coming year. Congratulations.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
What's next? Oh, secretary. I'd like to nominate Gabe Lopes as secretary of the school committee.
Second.
Mr. Chair, take a lead here. Oh, it's all you now.
Was that fast?
That fast, yeah. Is there any discussion?
Nope.
No? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? And Mr. Lopes is the secretary, and so passes.
Take the big boy chair.
Ready? Oh, jeez.
Let's take a pause for a moment as they shuffle the chairs.
All right. Before we begin, we would like to open it up for any community comments. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to come up for their 3 minutes?
Hi, everyone. My name is Julie DeFilippo, and I'm the chair of the Danvers CPAC. It's great to see new faces here tonight and welcome you to our school community. I am here to comment on the policy you are voting on tonight around seclusion, timeout rooms, and restraint. I urge you to not act on this. This is a law that got worse as the state has worked on it. There are alternatives, but if we are going to have a mission where we are having supports and say students thrive, don't pass this policy. I work with teens that now have been secluded and restrained and in timeout rooms, which if you call it a a wiggle room, I've heard it called, or a sensory room, and by any name, it is the same exact thing, and it's traumatizing children. It disproportionately affects children with special needs. And so we, on behalf of the families that I work with and that I represent here tonight, I really ask you to consider an alternative. There are many out there, and there is not enough training. The training that schools receive, it is not at all, like school districts don't do the full training, first of all, and the proportion of it that is de-escalation is maybe 10%, not even. I can tell you when timeout rooms are on the table, people work less, they don't work as hard to de-escalate. It's just, it's an option, it's there. I see it happen all the time. So I seriously ask you to consider not taking any action. I have policies that you can look at. They're far better, far more humane, will lead to far less trauma than voting on this tonight. There is a movement across the state to speak out about this. I think you might have seen in the Boston Globe, there's been a number of articles, even this past weekend. I really ask you to consider that we do not have this in Danvers. Unless you go to, as a committee, go to every school, go into every room, have them open every door. Go stand in them and imagine your child in there or yourself in there. It is not okay that we do this to children. And then we wonder why they continue to be dysregulated. We continue to put them in timeout rooms. And if you are needing a timeout room that much, and I'm not saying that happens here in Danvers, but in schools that I've talked to the directors, then you're doing something wrong. Maybe it's putting them in the timeout rooms. These are small children half the time. Are we really scared of small autistic disabled children, that they are the villains here? And it's absolutely ridiculous. We need to end this practice. I can send you any material you'd like. I think you should table this and consider alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to come to the podium? Okay, is there any other interest from the school committee? Let's see. All right. We're going to bring it to the student representative.
Thank you, Chair. As we move into the information from the superintendent, well, the report, CPAC recognition and recognition at the high school. DECA is going to be postponed till June in the technology. So to lead off, our wonderful student representatives, Ali and Nathan. Take it away, please.
Thank you.
We had the play 6. It was remarkable. Played before sellout audiences. It was a story of the 6 wives of Henry VIII, and with an all-female cast, including supporting cast. And we also have the Memorial Day Parade coming up for the marching band, which I'm very excited for.
So moving on, last week our AP tests began. Lots of students are taking them, and seniors are taking them if they're that's their only classes left, so they're just coming in for their classes and then coming in for their exam date, and then once that exam's over, they're basically done with school. So I finished mine last week, so I'm all done with school and I'm just on internship now. I'm interning at Great Oak, and I'm in a kindergarten classroom, and it has been such a good experience. I've really enjoyed it. I wasn't sure how much I was gonna enjoy it, but I really am enjoying it so much. And it's just been really fun for me to get to do. And AP tests are continuing until this Friday, I believe.
The National Art Honor Society induction is actually happening in about 20 minutes from right now. About 25 students are being inducted. Congratulations to each one of them. The trip to Switzerland and Italy was very successful. All 12 students loved it, and we thank Mr. Surratt, Mr. Hamilton, and our 2 parent chaperones.
So spring sports are underway now, and everyone is having a very successful season. Some highlights is that lacrosse defeated Marblehead for the first time and beat undefeated and 3rd-ranked Winthrop. So that was a huge accomplishment for them. They're also going to the tournament, and baseball and softball are both headed to the tournament with a very successful season so far. My sister's on that team, and she's really enjoyed it. Track and tennis are also both well into their season, and they've had some great performances and improvement each week. And then wrapping up some of things, the senior prom is next Tuesday, May 19th. Crossing our fingers for really good weather and really hoping for no rain. Last year, our junior prom was really beautiful. We had such a nice day. The academic award recognition night is also May 20th, so that next Wednesday. And that's for any students who are being recognized for an academic award from a class that like a teacher nominates them for, basically. And our last update for today is that MCAS for sophomores for the math MCAS will also be next Wednesday, May 20th. And this is my last meeting, so I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity as well. Thank you, Mr. Strauss, for being so helpful and supplying us with so many things. Oh. But yeah, it's been a really, really good opportunity for me. I'm very thankful.
Well, as your last meeting, and I know it's hard to say because we said earlier that we'll have to find somebody, not to replace you, you're not able to be replaced, but somebody that could fill the role next year. But we just want to say thank you, Olivia, from the school committee, and it's just been refreshing as superintendent to hear your lively reports. So, Chair Doherty, would you like to give Olivia her gift?
Yeah, absolutely. And we would also like to, my 2 years here have been your 2 years here, and I definitely appreciate the energy that you bring and the enthusiasm, not just for your own classmates, but for all levels throughout the district, and we appreciate that.
Thank you so much. It's so kind. Thank you so much. No, thank you so
I think we have to get a quick picture, though, with the committee. The members. Watch that cord,
Thank you guys so much. Oh, thank you.
Anything else on the student report?
No, that's it for today.
That's it? All right, that was a mic drop, right? All right. We have the great pleasure of presenting the Impact Award. So we have Dr. Musil to come back to the podium, please. Presentation.
So Danvers CPAC was so excited that this year we launched our, what's going to be an annual, we hope, Impact Awards in order to recognize the many staff members, teachers, IAs, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, so many of the staff here in Danvers go out of their way to make students feel included, to make them feel welcome, and even in the smallest ways that they don't realize. The bus driver or the van driver that picks up a kid every morning and is that steady person there every day with a warm smile, helps their morning go smoothly in the transition. We really wanted to give them an opportunity to get the credit and the recognition that they really deserve. So we have decided to create 3 awards, and I'm really excited that we had some wonderful nominations. It was hard for our selection committee to pick because there was just so much outstanding work going on, really. But I'm going to start with our first award, is named the Catalyst Award. And it's an award that honors a student who serves as a proactive catalyst for disability-related inclusion. Through their initiative, they spark meaningful change in how students interact, ensure that accessibility, inclusivity, and mutual understanding are integrated into the daily life of the Danvers Public Schools. This student doesn't just participate in the community, but they actively work to ensure their peers with disabilities are valued, included, and heard. And I'm excited. There was 2 students that really stood out, and we wanted to recognize them both. And so Principal Strauss is going to help me talk about their meaningful contributions, and they're here with us tonight. Our first honoree is Lucy Osborne. And Principal Strauss will come.
You're starting with Lucy? Lucy? Hi, everybody. Lucy Osborne is the MVP of Best Buddies. She developed strong and authentic relationships with all other members, helped run events when asked, and was always the first to show up. A valuable member of the unified team, Lucy is adored by everyone, and we are all grateful for her dedication and positivity. You're going to hear me say this 3 times tonight, but as a special education parent, I always look for people who would care about my child. And Lucy Osborne is the epitome of that. Congratulations. Where is she? Congratulations.
I'll be the short one, though.
Lucy's humble. She doesn't like this. Ava Patch is the president of the DHS Best Buddies chapter for this past year. She was in charge of planning events and communicating with members. One of her many highlights, and we could have listed 8 or 9, of her tenure as president was a Best Buddies trip to watch the DHS girls basketball team beat Masco. Her positivity is contagious, and our students in our school are better for Ava's involvement. Ava will be attending South Carolina and studying pharmacy next year. We will miss her, and our students will miss her. Congratulations, Ava.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Gotta get that in there.
She knows I'll embarrass her.
Yeah.
It's up to you. Thank you.
Well done,
Thank
Ava.
you.
You gonna do Josh now?
Yeah, Joe, I can read about what the description. Our next award is called the Keystone Award, and this award recognizes an individual who serves as the essential stone in a student's educational journey. By providing steady, reliable, and foundational support, this person ensures that students with disabilities have the structural equity that they need to thrive. And so this year, we are honoring Josh Jordan with this award.
Josh Jordan is the epitome of professionalism, care, compassion, and excellence. Every student matters to Josh, and his kindness and patience that is displayed every day is a model we should all follow. Again, as a special education parent, I always ask, is this a person who I would want my child being led by? Without hesitation, the answer is an absolute yes. He is an excellent, excellent teacher, and more importantly, a better human being. Congratulations, Josh.
Thank you.
Well done.
Can I call my family up here? They want their picture at school committee. Brothers, sisters, my brother-in-law, and my mother-in-law. Come on. Yes. Thank you.
Our last award is called the Unified Impact Award, and Ms. Powers is going to help me present it. The family who nominated this particular individual wanted to remain anonymous, but they said lovely things about this teacher, some of which were, the teacher has really helped change the way people see and support students with disabilities. She focuses on the way kids can do and help others see those strengths too. Because of the way she interacts with students, it encourages both staff and peers to be more understanding, patient, and inclusive. You can tell she truly believes all students are capable and should be valued, and that mindset has a positive impact on the entire school community. And so we are honored to give this award to Mrs. Megan White from the Smith School.
Good evening, everyone. I am proud to recognize Mrs. White for her outstanding contributions as the recipient of the Unified Impact Award, honoring individuals who foster social inclusion, meaningful connections, and a strong sense of belonging with our school community. Through her compassion, patience, and dedication, Mrs. White has made a meaningful impact on the lives of students. She's deeply committed to creating an inclusive learning environment where all students feel valued, supported, and capable of success. Through her advocacy, collaboration, and commitment to equity, she fosters a true sense of belonging for every child in her classroom and our school community. Mrs. White consistently goes above and beyond to ensure students have equitable access to learning opportunities while also feeling seen, heard, and encouraged each day. Her positive spirit and caring nature helps students build confidence, resilience, and meaningful connections with others. But what I admire most is when I had a chance to talk to your students, and I have some quotes from them about what they think about you. I had a chance to speak to several of Ms. White's students, and here's what they had to say. Mrs. White, she talks to you when you're struggling and helps you talk it out. She's an awesome math teacher who makes it fun. She's always helping people and is the best teacher ever. She's lovable and fun and always tries her best, even when things are hard. One student said, she is always positive and looks on the bright side. These words perfectly capture the heart of who Mrs. White is, an educator who leads with kindness, inclusion, positivity, and an unwavering commitment to helping her students thrive. Congratulations on this well-deserved honor, and thank you for the incredible impact you continue to make in our school community. Congratulations.
It's my daughter's birthday, so I don't have family here, but I have my best friends. And they surprised me. I didn't even know they were coming.
Mrs.
So.
Brown, come on over.
Yes. Yes. Oh, jeez.
Sweet, very sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for allowing us to present the awards. We really enjoyed this whole process, that we have decided that we're going to open sort of, we haven't decided what to call it, but an ongoing form for people to submit glows or glimmers each week whenever they want to CPAC, that we can, make sure are highlighted on an ongoing basis, in our newsletters and wherever we show up. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and I don't know if the committee has any comments, but I just want to say, Julie, thank you to CPAC for these important awards, and also congratulations to Ava and Lucy. This is what it's all about, helping out others, and it's just wonderful examples. Family I know very proud too, and certainly to Mr. Jordan and Miss White, it's just great to have you here, and I know the feedback from others was that there's so many individuals in our district that work hard day in and day out to support all of our students. You're at this point here for the recognition, but certainly know that there's others there too. And there was an email that was sent by CPAC that just listed a number of the nominations of what was said. So we're so proud of all of you. And again, special thanks to CPAC. I don't know if the school committee has any comments.
No, I'd like to say that, not just in the school community, but step outside. And everybody in this town has gathered around people with needs over the last several years. And for this to be recognized on this stage, I think is fantastic. And I appreciate Julie's efforts and the rest of CPAC, not just Julie, but everybody else who could not be here tonight, as well as all the educators and all the students, recognizing that we're not all the same. We all have our struggles, whether we're neurotypical or not. And to be able to coexist is, something that is very important. So thank you for recognizing each other on both sides of that award. Thank you.
I appreciate you setting that update to us, and it was heartening to see all the nominees. I don't even know how you made a selection, but you did, and congratulations to everyone. And congratulations to the nominees, and even those that are not nominated. They do the work every day. It goes seen, but a lot of times it doesn't go recognized. And it's just very, like I said, it's very heartening to know these people work in this district. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Okay, this is a lot of happy times, so we'd like to bring Principal Strauss back up. We have a significant recognition through a performing arts department, and glad that Mr. Grover's here as well. I'm going to turn this over to Principal Strauss to introduce and talk a lot about the Heart of Arts Award.
Luckily for you, Kylie has to go to National Art Honor Society because otherwise I would read the speech that we did the other day, and that would take 5 or 6 minutes, and we don't have that kind of time, which makes Mike Shannon very happy. I want to start by saying I was fortunate enough to coach 2 Gatorade Players of the Year, which is considered to be the athletic Heisman in high school. Nothing has excited me, and I said this to Mr. Grover, in my entire career as this award that I'm about to talk about right now. Every year, the MIAA and the National Federation of State High School Associations search the entire country for one individual, student or adult, or one group, student or adult, who truly represents the heart of the arts. Only one Heart of the Arts Award is given within each state, which will lead to 8 regional winners being named and ultimately 1 national recipient. They're not looking for the person with the most trophies on their shelf or the most solos in the program. They are looking for the single person or group whose spirit is the reason the program exists, a true catalyst. Across the Commonwealth, with its rich history in the arts, there are thousands who could be named. In fact, there were 1,173 nominations in the state of Massachusetts alone this year. There is only one who is named. It's not a Heisman Trophy-like award given to the best player. It's been described more akin to a Nobel Prize awarded to celebrate significant impact in contributions to the arts. Just as I did in writing her nomination essay, I want to say this. One shouldn't receive this because they seem better than anyone else in any room. One should receive this because they make everyone else better in any room that they're in. That is Kylie Collins. It's with incredible joy and excitement, and I cannot continue to say how much, and an immense amount of pride for the Danvers fine arts community, our school community, and all of Danvers to introduce the first ever, not only Danvers High School, not only North Shore recipient, but national finalist for the MIAA National NFHS Heart of the Arts Award recipient, Kylie Collins. I can't tell you how big this is for Kylie. It is a remarkable achievement. And I don't know, Mr. Grover, if there's anything you want to say?
Thanks for having me up. It's just an honor and a pleasure to be standing up here with Mr. Strauss and Kylie. I can add a little bit of context to Kylie's presence in our program, which is just an aura of kindness and commitment and enthusiasm for everything that we do. She's a part of our choral program. She's a member of the marching band as a color guard captain. She's the captain of the Winter Guard, and she's been a dance captain for many of our shows in the theater department. So just the constant joy and positive intensity and care for others that she brings to all of our rehearsal processes and performances has just been a pleasure to watch. So congrats, Kylie, and we're so happy for our school and our community.
You want to take a picture for your Come on. Please. Yeah. Just focusing on the glasses up. Right, cheese. 3, 2, 1, cheese. Congratulations. Okay, and the last piece for the superintendent update is a technology update. So if we could have our director of technology, Mr. James Sullivan. He has an update in terms of the one-to-one device program and other items. And I'll change your slides for you, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, appreciate that. Good evening, everybody. Jim Sullivan, Director of Technology. Glad to be back. So providing an update tonight on the one-to-one program. So just as the quick recap, this has been really a year-long process and year-long conversations where we've been looking at the one-to-one program that we have in the district, right now, this year, and for the past few years, it's been set up so that every student grades K through 12 has been assigned a Chromebook for their, for their learning in their classrooms and their use. And this year was really a conversation to look at, does our model make sense, and what are the recommendations moving forward? So as part of that, we've had a lot of conversations. We've gathered a lot of data this year, and I'm happy to give you an update on what we're looking at potentially for next year. So the big piece of the feedback and the data was we did surveys. So we reached out, we did a survey specifically to staff to gather feedback on how they're using it in the schools, what they like, any concerns that they have. And then we also did a separate survey to families to reach out and understand what they see as the pros and the cons, any concerns or questions that they may have with the devices. And we did get a good response back. We had over 200 staff that provided feedback in the survey. We then had over 350 families that responded to the survey as well. And we also did some follow-up with staff as well if they wanted to have more of an in-depth conversation. So we did have a conversation at the elementary level and the high school level to talk a little more in depth. So we did our best to make sure that anybody that wanted to contribute to the conversation was heard, and that we gathered that information. So some of the highlights and the summaries from the conversations and from the surveys that we had. The high school teachers, some of their feedback was, they're looking for, they're looking for students to have a better device. So the feedback is that the Chromebook may not have enough horsepower for the students to use that, but also, they believe that we should be looking at and using a more professional grade device that they'll be using when they go out into the work world. And as part of that, also at the middle school, so this year at the middle school, we piloted at grade 6 a program where we brought the Chromebooks, back in-house so that they lived in the homerooms, in carts. So the feedback was very positive on that. We worked with the administrative team at the middle school. We did some, feedback and input from those teachers at the 6th grade level, and they did like how that program worked. So the other grades at the middle school, particularly the 7th and 8th, have been watching that, and that was some of their feedback in the survey that they did like, how that's been looking this year. And the other piece of feedback from staff, really district-wide, is the classroom management piece, is where sometimes students get off task, and it's hard to bring them back in and making sure that we have the tools available for them to work with the students in their classrooms. So as part of that, the other survey was the family survey, and so the questions in this were different than the staff because we were looking at, they're used in different ways and looking at the different feedback there. One of the big things that was highlighted during that survey with the families was screen time. The families are concerned about screen time, not just at home, but also, the question is, how much is it being used at school? Sometimes that's clear, sometimes it's not clear, like how much of the devices are being used, so that was something that they're hoping to get more information about. And same thing actually with the high school parents is, having a very similar conversation to what the staff were saying, looking for a device that is a professional grade device that has a little more horsepower, but also getting them ready for the work world, i.e., like a PC or a Mac. And the other issue, or the other piece of feedback, I should say, is the financial piece. So, one of the questions that we did ask was like, what would happen if we changed the model? Like if we considered doing a bring your own device, or if we considered a lease to own, or purchase outright, some other type of model instead of the Chromebook model that we have now, where the feedback in general was that families are supportive of that, but just make sure that it's affordable, like make sure that we don't create a model that outprices the families, which I think is very important. So moving forward, based on this data from the staff, based on the data from the families, and having conversations throughout the district, what we're proposing is essentially a model that looks different at every level. It's no longer really the same model because I think the conversation was it doesn't need to be. The classrooms don't operate the same way at every level, so it doesn't make sense that the technology needs to have the same requirements. So as part of this at the elementary level, we're looking to break down the one-to-one model in K-2 and really set it up so that each classroom has a small set of devices if they need to access technology, but there's no reason for them to have a Chromebook dedicated to them at the younger grade levels, but just have access to it as available. 3 to 5, that's when typically the students are starting to work more, doing essays, doing more online learning, other resources that are available online. So and as well as statewide testing. So we're looking at keeping the one-to-one model at grades 3 to 5, but keeping the devices in the classroom. At the middle school, since we see that the Chromebook cart model in the homerooms has been successful, we're looking to extend that next year to grade 7. So it'll be a similar model, so the students in grade 6 will have the same experience moving into grade 7, and then the new incoming 6th graders will also be in carts. So we're going to phase that in, so it'll probably be another year until grade 8 moves to those carts as well, but we're looking to transition those in. And then what's more of the I guess I'll call it the dramatic change, is looking at how we're operating at the high school. So we've heard the feedback loud and clear that they're looking for a more professional device, and they're looking for a device that they'll use, and they can even take with them going up to whatever their next step is. So as part of that, we're looking at setting up a lease-to-own program starting in grade 9 with the new MacBook Neo laptops. So as part of the process that we've had throughout the year, we've been looking at, what are the different devices available, which is really, at the high level, it's usually a PC, a Mac, or we also looked at the iPad. So as part of that, we wanted to be careful of, the feedback, making sure that whatever we do is, is affordable for our families, and also making sure that it's a good, high quality device. So part of, we started looking at the iPads as an option as well, and we looked at the PC laptop, but what we found as a district is, because we are mostly a Mac and a Chromebook environment, that we're not set up well for PCs, to transition students to PCs. So that brought us to really looking at at a Mac or an iPad. And we originally started to lean towards the iPad because it was a little more affordable than the MacBook is. However, as part of the conversation, as part of the process went on, Apple actually did release the MacBook Neo, the new model that's available at a lower cost. We've been testing that for the past few months in our office, with all the different softwares that we have, and we've had really good luck with that. So the price point is, is more affordable than the MacBooks, the MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, some of those devices, and it does have, the quote-unquote horsepower that the Apple has versus, the Chromebooks that we've been purchasing up until now. So we're looking at a lease-to-own program that would be essentially, the families would make payments over the 4 years that they're here to make that device, and then when they graduate or when they leave the district, they can actually take that device with them. So they can take that to whatever their next step is, they can continue to use it, they could hand it down, it's their device at that point, so they can really do whatever they please. But as part of that, we've been looking at how, this will work inside of our environment. So, we're confident that because, we are, essentially a Mac district now, we operate Macs, we have the tools and resources in place so that we can continue to manage these devices and make sure that the teachers have the control that they need in the classroom as well while the students are here. So then when they graduate, the management comes off, they take it with them, and they're on their way. So part of this too, we want to make sure that whatever we do, that that all families can access it. So we're working on a financial waiver process similar to what we have in the district now, but to make sure that we have different tiers available so that the students still have access to devices if they need to. So as part of that, what we're talking about, what we're doing. So we've started to have some of these conversations, in the district with staff to share the data where we're at, answering any questions. The most dramatic change is going to really be at the high school. So because there's a dramatic change in device there. Part of it too, from a teaching and learning standpoint that we're talking about is there will be, potentially a couple of years where there might be mixed devices in the classrooms, where right now, typically, we've been providing a Chromebook, every student has a Chromebook, but if we're starting with grade 9 with this lease-to-own program, there could be classes that have, students in different grades, there might be a mix of devices. So we're gonna work with the Apple professional development team to provide our staff with some training, some best practices on how we can make sure that they're supported with, devices, with different types of devices in the classroom. The other thing that I forgot to mention too, as part of the high school program with the lease to own. So we are starting with grade 9 because we're planning the lease to own to be multiple payments over multiple years. But we will likely give upperclassmen the opportunity, if they want to opt in, they can, but not make it a required thing because less payments will require bigger costs. So, but we're trying to offer some flexibility there if people do want to opt into it. And as part of that, thank you. So one of the things that, a big part of the conversations that we're having and we're talking about these changes is that most of the devices are going to remain at school. And one of the things that we're fortunate is that we actually just received a grant. Actually, some of the devices were actually just delivered today. From the Mass Broadband Institute. It's called the Connected Online Program. So we were actually able to apply for this grant, which will provide us with Chromebooks that we can send home with families who may not be able to afford a device. So we are going to work on a communication to the community so that we can figure out the best way to distribute these devices. But this is actually perfect timing. So as we're looking at changing this model, if there are families that may not have a device at home that need one, we will be able to provide them with a device. So. And that's my update. So I'm sharing here just this link. I'm sharing more for the community. This was one of the pieces of feedback that did come from the family survey, is that some families weren't aware that we did have this online safety hub, which is a list of resources and articles that are available for families about different types of technology lessons and topics. So I'm just sharing this link as something that's available, but it's also linked on our website as well.
Through the chair. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. If somebody has a device already at home, whether it be Apple or PC, will they be able to use that at the high school level?
So the goal is that the concern is around the management of that device. So we do want to use school issued devices, and depending on where even next year some of the laws change, there may be restrictions on personal devices as well. So we're working on making sure that we have consistent device that we're providing to or that we're offering up to our students, which will help the management piece, but also the learning in general if it's more consistent.
That's good to hear. I would hope that the students being a little bit older, a little bit more mature, that the devices may survive a little bit better. But we also know that things happen. So who's going to be responsible to service those devices, and how would that cost be handled as well?
Great question. So the way that we're hoping to set up this program is when we purchase the devices as part of the lease to own program, they'll actually be purchased with 4 years of Apple Care as well. So it'll be 4 years of Apple Care included with the device. So if anything does happen to the device while they're here with us for those 4 years of high school, they'll be able to work with the computer instructional assistant who sits in the library right now. And instead of having the Chromebook fixed, they would bring their device in. We'd be able to ship it out to Apple to have it repaired and sent back. So we would be able to help them facilitate the repair with Apple.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Thanks, Jim. I think you definitely thought this out. Well. Thought well out. I don't know what's the right say, but I think it's well thought out. It really is. There it is. It came to me. I did have one question, 2 questions actually. The first one is regarding the middle school Chromebooks. My daughter's 7th grade, and she was actually on her Chromebook before I left tonight, and it's 100% possible that she was messing around on it and not doing schoolwork. But if there are assignments and the kids are asked to keep it in school, like how does that? Maybe this is a question for. Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if it was for you. So
yeah. So this is part of the conversations we've been working through this year with the 6th grade. Mm-hmm. So there's I guess a couple levels to it. So we are the devices are staying at school. So we did send a survey home to ask families if they have a device at home, and if they don't, if we sent either some recommended specs, or if there was a hardship, that we had a process to be able to provide them with the device. So the same thing goes, if there is, some type of, need at home where they can't provide a device, then we do have that, this new program where we'd be able to send the device home if needed.
Got it. Okay. And then my second question is at the high school level, if they're leasing to own these MacBook Neos, which I think is great because it's a lower cost MacBook, but at the 4-year mark, are these gonna be obsolete at that point? Like if they're buying them in ninth grade, I know when I use my iPhone after a few years and a lot of Apple updates, it makes that thing run really, really slowly, and it's almost time to get rid of it. Is that a possibility that these are gonna be not running as wonderfully as they should be?
I don't think there's much to worry about at the 4-year mark. So one of the conversations that we've had with Apple as we've been looking at the program in general is they have now a guaranteed buyback actually even at the 4-year mark. So if somebody did want to trade in their device, there's a guaranteed dollar value that at the 4 years if they wanted to. Typically Apple in terms of updates and support, will support a device for at least 6 years, sometimes longer. This is a new device, so we don't know what the roadmap is, but I would imagine it would at least be that those 6 years of updates. And one of the things that it's still pretty new, but Apple has done a good job of actually making these devices more user repairable if needed. So where with some of the MacBooks now, like it's all one solid piece, and
Right.
only Apple can fix it. But there's supposed to be actually like things like batteries available in the future that they can actually be repaired if needed. So
Awesome. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, Jim, I had a couple small questions. Where we're still keeping the Chromebooks in the middle schools, is that going to be an easy transition for the students to adapt to? I know they're way younger than I am and probably more adept, even though I had an Atari 2600 in the day. But to adapt to the Apple easily, to jump into that. That's part one. And then part two, I know when I was taking classes when I was in college originally, the Apples and the PCs were good for certain types of classes. Are there going to be any classes that depend upon, like a cartography class, for example, something I took, would not have been compatible with one or the other? Is there something that might cross over there that we would have to have a little bit of both?
Great question. So at the high school, we do have some specialized computer labs still available for some of those needs. So we do have like a computer-aided design lab, which has some higher end PCs in it. We do have like a music lab, a TV studio, art lab. So some of those, at least right now, they'll continue to stay in place if they need some of the specialized things that aren't compatible. The good news is most of the software we use now is actually web-based, so it's more it's software as a service, so they have the ability to sign on to using almost any device. So I'm not too worried about that, but we do have those other labs available. In terms of the learning curve of using the device, I think that the Mac OS in general has become a little more agnostic. Like they're actually, even the new iPads now, a lot of it is blending together. And I think it's fairly intuitive, but that is a good point, and that's something I can talk to our our high school curriculum director about. Just even if we should do some student-facing transitions, or maybe even some getting started videos, things like that. But I think we could definitely provide some resources.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Through the chair? So two things, just to Josh, and maybe it's just, my daughter had a white MacBook, right? So she went to Beverly, and when she graduated, she actually let us know as parents that she had to suffer through college with that same MacBook. And successfully, right, she's managed. We still have that in our house. I don't know if it still works, I'm sure it does, but I mean, we can't predict the Neo, but certainly we have, because Mac is so educationally inclined with their software and such, I think that's a good thing. The second thing that's of interest to us is that the Apple Care should take a pretty big burden off of, I think that's going to be a long way. I think the problem we're going to have, and it's not a problem, it's a good thing, is that the grades 10, 11, and 12, they're going to want to have their own. And right now we just have enough to really cover the freshmen and get them going, but certainly down the road, take a look and see if there's any expansion opportunities, but certainly, but we feel that's a good thing to have. And we know that as a district, we have more discussions about screen time. We have more discussions, and that's part of the reduction at the grades K through 2 is that we know that processing and higher level thinking requires just grit, organizing information, whereas typing and working on the computer doesn't provide that. So we're going, and that actually came through our staff surveys, climate and culture, and the parental ones. So, and there were a lot on the parental ones, so we as a district really need to take a look at how are we using technology. I think there's a balance. You know, and I think as the pendulum does swing, you know, we want to make sure we're in a good spot and positioned well for that.
I won't claim that when I was in college, I didn't use an abacus. But really, you had a laptop when you were in college? They actually existed?
No, I said it was a computer lab. I said PC and Mac. I did not say it was a laptop, no. I went to college, my parents got me a typewriter when I graduated Danvers High.
So I'm curious about the cost that this is to the district and whether or not there are grants available, whether through DESE or some other program.
So the question is specifically around the grade 9, like the MacBooks?
Really, in general, this is a lot of computers. I know the one-on-one program is an expense, and I'm just curious how that's
Yeah, so
supplemented.
So the way we have it set up now, the devices that we have at the elementary level are of a couple of different ages that we purchased either through grants at the time. Actually, I think they were all through grants at the time, whether it was from DESE or from the federal government. The middle school devices that we have right now were part of a lease program, so we leased them as the district. So we've actually paid those off now. Excuse me, but we still own them. We bought them out. And then the devices that are at the high school now, the Chromebooks, were part of a lease as well, so a separate lease. So the middle school and high school were sort of in alternating lease cycles. Is part of the budget reduction, so we discontinued the lease, so it's paid off actually at the middle school, so that there's no cost for those devices right now, but we are maintaining them.
If I could through the chair, and I think Beth brings up a really good point that, you know, we have the maintenance and upkeep. It's quite expensive, and I know we have the $35 licensure fee, but oftentimes that's been a struggle with that. So we know that the MacBooks on the horizon will offer relief with the Apple Care, but that is something that we need to look into more as we proceed through because it's a big expense. And even with we saw a reduction, I think, in terms of damages with the homeroom with the carts. And, you know, I know that's something that the middle school's really working on. That's common through middle schools. So I think that's something that we really need to take a good, hard look at.
Thank you. Thank you. And just a note of gratitude too, you know, thank you for your support, but also to all of the staff and the families that provided their feedback for this process too. So that was very helpful. Thank you. Take care.
All right, next we're going to move on to new business. We have the Holton Richmond Middle School Camp Cody field trip.
Yes, that field trip is for final approval, Chair and the committee. Is Mr. Belay here? Okay. Well, then I would recommend table that till June, if that's possible, if that's amenable to the committee.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, we have the HRMS Washington, D.C. field trip.
Hello. Good evening. So we're here for approval for our Washington, D.C. trip this June. Mr. McGraw is our trip advisor. We're here to just prepare for you the numbers of who's enrolled for the trip, the plan for students that are not going on the trip, efforts this fall we made to make sure the trip was accessible to all families, and any other questions that you have. So I'll turn over to Mr. McGraw to kind of give some finer details about the trip, and we can both answer any questions.
Yeah, good evening. So we'll be bringing 168 eighth graders down to DC, with 18 adults. The cost per family was $972. The last 2 years, per student, I should say, because some families are sending more than one student. Last 2 years, though, we've had a great fundraiser, calendar fundraiser that allowed the kids to raise as much money as they wanted, and it all went sort of directly individually to reducing the cost for their own trip. So it was highly motivating. I think in reality, the parents were doing a lot of the motivating, but it's been pretty successful for a lot of the kids and deferred their costs. So we got 168 out of 221, I think we said, right, was the total 8th grade number. It's about 76% when I did the math downstairs. That's up a little bit for the last couple of years. So we had a good turnout this year. It's 4 days, 3 nights. We leave early on a Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. Get back around 7 o'clock Friday night. There's a lot of, ever since civics has come back into the 8th grade curriculum a few years back, it's super direct connections with a lot of the monuments and a lot that we see down there. We also go to the Holocaust Museum, which we have a Holocaust unit in English Language Arts in 8th grade. So there's a lot of great curriculum connections. It's a lot of it, as well as, culminating trip for the 8th graders, dinner, dance, things like that down there. So over the years, it's been a great trip, and we're hoping we have another really successful one this year.
I'd just like to say that I know this trip has been going on for a long time because I was very lucky to be a one-on-one chaperone for this trip twice. So if I walk around the halls, I might be able to find myself. But I think this trip is fantastic. The kids that I went with definitely got a lot out of it. A lot of history in that city, obviously. So I appreciate you guys keeping it alive.
Good, Chair. I love the trip. All 3 Shannons went, had a great time. But you have 24% of the kids not going. That's a big number, in my opinion. And logistically, that becomes a burden on the rest of the building. So could you just maybe address, like, how are those kids going to be managed? By whom, where, and what will they be engaged in as far as learning, being back here?
Yeah, all great questions, and that's actually, the 24% is down. Last few years, it was closer to 33% weren't enrolled, and that was a big concern for us coming into this year. So, I surveyed families around January to find out some more information about why families weren't registering, to kind of not just assume it was cost. So we got a wide range of responses. Cost was certainly up there, but I think just families' comfort level around their child's maturity, some social emotional concerns, world event concerns, just it was a whole range of reasons families opted to not go. But with that said, since I've been here, it's my 3rd year going into the DC trip, each year we've tried to do a better job planning for the students that are staying back. So I have a teacher I'm working with in the 8th grade who's really planning out a nice, well thought out week to the best we can. We can't replicate, obviously, the experience of the students that are going. But for the week, the students will be going over to Salem. We coordinated a walking history tour. They'll have lunch in Salem. We coordinated a nice event over there. We'll have an in-house enrichment program here as well. We've tried to work with our PAC on some fundraising to bring, some luncheons and some snacks. The Cookie Monster truck will be here for them. On the first day that they'll be here, when their peers leave, they'll be grouped in smaller classes with the 8th grade teachers staying back. There's a good amount of 8th grade teachers that are not going that will be able to pair them up. So we'll do our best to replicate, well, not replicate, but create an engaging week for the students and really help them feel welcomed and supported, and really encourage them to be here for the week. But each day we have something different planned for them. In fact, I told 8th grade families over the weekend in my update that I'd be sending home an itinerary for the week for them as well.
Thank you.
It sounds like an exciting week, and I appreciate the request for a vote. I'm more curious about, what's the full agenda? I know you've been doing this for a long time, so, what is the agenda? What is Plan B in case of emergency? Like, what types of plans are in place? Are there any partnerships with, like, local police or with security on the ground? Things like that.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, so, obviously safety is always number one. Some of the things that are in place and have been in place for a while. I mean, when we get to DC, we'll get there probably around 3:30 or 4 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, and each bus gets a local tour guide, so they're with us from that time until we leave Friday morning. And so they know the lay of the city well, so if something, God forbid, were to happen, we can kind of pivot and make a educated and informed decision to put safety first. Again, God forbid, the ultimate of that would be to pack the buses up and go home. So we hope that doesn't happen. As far as security, when we are at the hotels, we actually, the tour company we go through hires off-duty and retired police officers, and they sit on each floor. We have one officer who sits in the security, and they monitor the hallway. They do basically a foot patrol, and they sit in the hallway, and they give us a report every morning. We get a nice report about if there were any noise complaints or anything like that. Yes, that's a big security concern. We do put masking tape on the doors. It's more of a the kids know about it. If they were ever to open the door in an emergency, we've had fire drills down there before, and obviously everybody can get out. But if a student did decide to make some kind of error in judgment and leave their room for some reason, becomes quite obvious. Even if the security guard has their back, when the next time they turn around and come back down, the masking tape has been dislodged. But in all seriousness, the police officers are there. They're off-duty police officers. So I will, myself and Emmy Burrell, one of the assistant principals at the middle school, will be kind of the ones who they meet with and coordinate with every night and every morning, and we discuss any concerns. And then the tour guides are on every bus, and we'll continue to sort of be in touch with them and kind of play it by ear and make informed decisions. In years past, I've certainly communicated with Adam from DC about not, I wouldn't say serious safety concerns, but maybe student dietary needs or concerns that have popped up and things like that. All students have filled out their medical paperwork. We're still chasing a few, but most of them have gotten it in already. And so we have a school nurse coming on the trip so that we can take care of all medication concerns and things of that nature as well. Oh, yeah, the itinerary. So, like I said, we take off 6 a.m. Tuesday morning, Tuesday, June 2nd. And it's a long day. We'll stop a couple times on the way, bathroom break, a lunch break. And that is lunch on the way down, lunch on the way back are the two sort of meals that they take on at their expense in addition to the cost that they've already paid. And then unfortunately this year, this isn't my preferred. I always try to push for this, not to do this, but we're doing it straight to the baseball game. So we'll actually, our first meal will be at Nationals Park, and we'll go get, the reason I say that is because I like to let the kids get some energy out. We go see some monuments and stuff. But later in the week, we have a dinner dance on Thursday night that was penciled in, and Wednesday night, it's a day game actually this year for the Nationals. So it didn't work out that way. So we're going the first night to the baseball game. Then we'll go back and check in at the hotel, day 2. We're up early and out of there. The first group of kids will be eating breakfast at 6:45 a.m. And then we'll be at Arlington National Cemetery by 8 o'clock. So it's a great spot. Obviously, we'll watch changing of the guard ceremony for the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. So that's a really heavy moment for them. And the kids always rise to the occasion, do a great job. We'll go, in this itinerary, honestly, not the trip to Arlington National Cemetery, the baseball game, certain things are fixed. But a lot of this we will adapt on the fly depending on certain memorials and where the tour guide thinks, there's lower traffic at certain points. But Iwo Jima is scheduled after Arlington National Cemetery. And then by 10 o'clock, we're at the U.S. Capitol building. We get a tour of the exterior. We do a group picture. Sean's in one of them. Two. Yeah, we'll go to not the Smithsonian's Air and Space downtown. There's actually one in the outskirts of town that's an old airplane hangar, which is great. The kids love it. It's got flight simulators in there, all kinds of I don't know exactly which space shuttle from like the 80s it is, but it's a full model of that there, or the actual space shuttle actually. So there's a lot of that. Smithsonian's. We'll go see the Lincoln Memorial, Vietnam Memorial, Korean War Memorial. We go to the International Spy Museum. We'll see MLK. We'll see the FDR Memorial, the World War II Memorial. That's just that day. And the next day, We go to the 9/11 Memorial, which is great. I mean, it's at the Pentagon. Last year was the first year we saw that. That's, I think for a lot of our kids, they've heard so much about that at this point, and that seemed to really impress a lot upon them. Jefferson, we'll try to make our way to the backside of the White House where there's an area you can take some pictures of the White House. You get kind of a glimpse of it. We have the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, the Museum of African American History. Both of those museums require like fixed appointments, so we go in there for those. And then at that point, there's some open time for, depending on what your chaperone group, like what their interests are, like, because there's the whole mall of the Smithsonian's, and you can kind of pick and choose a little bit with that. And then they have their dinner dance, which is at a hall, another hotel actually, where there's a nice hall, and it's still kind of like the boys are on one side and the girls are on the other side. But by that point, on that trip, most of them are actually on the dance floor. So it's a good way to finish the trip. And Friday's really just a driving home day because it's, we're really trying to get ahead of the traffic and get the kids back to their families. They're pretty excited not to eat like McDonald's at that point, so they want to get home.
Thank you. Yeah. No, thank you for that. It's good to hear the logistics and the security piece is really reassuring.
Yeah, no, we've been going through this particular tour company. I checked with Patrick Hamilton, who used to be the coordinator for this trip, and I think he estimated 29 or 30 years. So it's the same tour company, and they sort of have done a good job for us down there, so we feel pretty good about how they operate. There's been a few curveballs thrown along the way in different trips, so things have always worked out in the end well.
So just speaking to the middle school principal network, it's definitely a trip that we see the value in, but it's also a trip a lot of schools are really kind of evaluating at this point, like the sustainability of it long term. And so a lot of the middle schools are all in the same boat of, we see the value in it. We also see 25% of our students don't go. So we're a little bit of a crossroads, and we talked a lot with our parents this year about that, and I think that's why we saw a lot of great efforts for the families to come together in grade level and do some fundraising. They held events to raise money for the students staying back as well. So we have a nice fun to do events here as well that we hadn't done in years past, which was going to be really helpful.
Just one more thing, just because all this talk has brought things up in Camp Cody. I did that 7 years in a row with my students. We're talking about the students and the faculty. We just touched upon where my question was for the parents. Do you have like a meeting where you're gonna have like a forum where you're gonna sit down and have them ask you questions, the expectations of the kids, the expectations of, Joe's mother gives him $700 and my son only has 20,
Yeah.
things like that, financial burdens, all those other things that come up on
Yep.
trips like that.
Yep, so in the fall, because there's so much plan goes into this, so in the fall we have more of a required meeting for families that are interested, and then next week we're actually having another meeting for families that have any last minute questions, worries, concerns for families to come in.
It's Wednesday. This way. Just I don't.
Tomorrow night?
In case someone's
All right.
watching. In case someone's
Tomorrow night.
watching, it's actually
Yeah,
this
tomorrow.
Wednesday. It's this Wednesday.
And it's gonna be here?
Yeah.
It's gonna be here, everybody.
Through the chair.
Sure.
So I just have to ask this question because, and I know we've had dialogue just to bring this to the public, so obviously the cost of the trip is, it's expensive, right? And do we know, the families that have a financial need, because we have to provide an opportunity? Like, what is the mechanism for families to reach out to the school if they have a financial need, and how is that handled, and how is that navigated?
Yeah, so early on in the process, we communicate to all families that we don't want cost to be prohibitive, and so we ask all families to reach out kind of privately, confidentially, directly to me if there is a request for financial assistance. And we have several families that we are providing scholarships for. It's really just case by case when families reach out. But again, in the survey that we shared, families did acknowledge that the cost is a factor, and some families aren't comfortable reaching out, but we certainly ask all families to reach out early on in the process so we can start that conversation early.
One more question, just again to be public. Do we know in terms of the students staying behind, like, do you have an idea in terms of the reasons that families provide reasons? Do you have any data that you could share on that piece, like for financial reasons or personal reasons?
Yeah, so as I indicated, I did a Google form to all families. I didn't get a 100% response rate, and was also, no names attached to the survey. We're just trying to gather some data. And so those are a range of reasons families said they're opting out. Again, cost was one, but also just as many responses felt that their child just wasn't prepared for a trip like this, or it just wasn't their preference.
Okay, last point again, and I know we talk a lot, but I think it's important to share this because, Mr. Shannon brought this up. So you said that you will send home a communication to families for those that are not going on the trip, so they understand each day what the expectations are.
Yes.
I know my first year, there were some struggles in terms of that, and I know you worked hard through that. So you're gonna send home a communication shortly so parents and families know what to expect during those days with their child.
Yep, we're gonna send an itinerary home for the week.
And it'll highlight all the things each day, correct?
Correct.
Awesome, thank you.
To the chair, one last question. So we've heard a number of reasons why. In your opinion, I know you may not have the numbers in front of you. What's the number one reason they're not going? Is it cost?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's a significant factor. It's a lot of money for a school-based trip. So
Oh,
I would
agree.
say it's got to be one of the top reasons,
Okay,
for sure.
thank you.
I just want to say thank you. I know it's a lot of work that's going into it, and I just think it's important that we share this information so we're transparent with the public.
Yeah,
So, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Oh, yeah, right. Could I get a motion for a vote on the DC trip?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the request for the Washington DC field trip.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? It passes. And now we'll move on to the marching band fee.
To the chair?
Absolutely.
Certainly, if I could have Mr. Grover come up, just to walk us through the rationale for the marching band performing arts participation fee for the change recommended for school committee vote.
So I'm here tonight on a very technical, small, and straightforward issue, but I'll never pass up the opportunity to have the podium and the mic to contextualize what's going on in the performing arts and kind of leading up to this request here tonight. So this is, again, kind of like a little window into a lot of the work that we've been doing over the past few school years to kind of streamline our efforts in the performing arts and kind of be a part of more of a holistic vision of improving the organization, improving the personnel, and improving the infrastructure. And I've had the privilege and pleasure to be up in front of you all a bunch of times over the past 3-4 years to kind of go over different specifics of these efforts. And so like I said tonight, this is a small one, but the context is this. For FY24, the participation fees paid to the school or to the district for myriad activities was such a hodgepodge of different fees, and there was inconsistency in policy, in the amount of fees, how are they being collected, how are they being communicated. And so FY24 and anything before that, that's what existed in the performing arts. And then for FY25, we worked that year on really adding some different positions and streamlining the fees so that there was equity and consistency within them, so that they could be presented for FY26 and us really have like kind of a cohesive structure to any fee that a family was paying to the school. So this is really a part of like a much bigger process that we've been taking over the past 3 years. And I would say FY25 into FY26, we got 95% of the way there. And, you know, in working with the district office, I've had, you know, the opportunity to do that more and get to know the staff in the district office more, including, you know, Janet and Dan and a lot of the other administrative staff in there, and Pam Crum. You know, we uncover things that can continue to help us improve that infrastructure, so that we can make it as tight as possible. And that's really important when, you know, money is involved. And I'm really happy with where we've gotten. Like I said, we're only 95% there with this particular participation fee issue. And so tonight, we're just asking for an increase in one activity's fee, because that's how we need to do this with approval at the school committee. And it's increasing the marching band fee from 125 to 175. And this isn't an increase to families, it's just an increase to what's being paid to the district. Because like I said, not too long ago, it was a hodgepodge of like money coming in different places to the school. We have our boosters group. And so this past year, it was $50 to the boosters to cover band camp personnel and other costs. And it was $125 to the school. And so next year, we're just trying to put everything to the school to codify it. And, you know, because that's how it should be in terms of paying personnel. And so that's where we're at. I think the only other detail to go over with that is that if we're now paying our whole marching band fee to the district, then we're able to pay any ancillary staff for band camp, you know, through the payroll of the district. And I've already worked with Pam Crum on how we're going to do that, and it's actually a win-win from all sides, because we can be more specific about who we bring in, how much they work, and how much they get paid. So I think that's everything as it relates to this issue, and I'm happy to answer questions about it and give any more context.
So just to be clear, the families were already paying 175, just 50 to them, 125 here, and now all we're doing is streamlining.
Correct.
Thank you.
The chair. I had 2 band kids. That's 8 years paying for band camp. So based on what you're saying, am I expecting a refund? Because back then it was done the wrong way. So can I expect a refund?
Sorry, we're just straightforward at this point. I appreciate the question, though.
I took a shot.
If I could, I would.
took a shot.
If I could, I would.
I don't think this has anything to do with the fee, but what I'll say is, you know, my daughter's a 6th grader who's been doing band for about 2 or 3 years now. And the change from before band to after band, I mean, is it maturity or is it learning music and being able to interpret things in different ways? I think my wife and I have seen an incredible change in her maturity, and just walking around the house with the trumpet was just not something I envisioned my daughter doing, you know, a few years ago. So I'm fully supportive of this program. I'm happy to see that, you know, fees and payroll is going to be codified, and, you know, I hope it makes it easier for the families as well. But I just wanted to say kudos to the band program and everything that you guys are doing. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. You know, what I'm learning in doing all this work and bringing more of a, you know, administrative lens to the performing arts is that, you know, that type of stuff, this small, you know, kind of, you know, it's money, but it's like very, you know, kind of tedious. That stuff actually matters to, you know, what you're talking about, which is like the emotional side of things. Because the more that in this district we can improve those structures and the operations and the ability of our district and our schools to hire and support the personnel that can give the students those experiences, the better. And I'll just add, you know, Dan and I and the district office and the different schools are, you know, working on a lot of other things of this nature to continue the ascent of the performing arts. And, that's why I'm talking more than just reading the slide up here, because I just want you all to have that context that it is really important. We are working really hard. There's more balls in the air as it relates to this topic of the performing arts, and we're really excited about the direction of it. And I appreciate all the support from this committee as well.
Need to vote. Yeah. So I would entertain a motion for the marching band fee.
Motion to approve the increase in the marching band fee, or the change in the marching band fee structure.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? And so it passes.
Thank you very much.
And now we'll move on to the superintendent recommending amendment policy JKAA, the timeout, seclusion, and physical restraint of students for first reading.
Great, thank you, Chair. If I could call up our Director of Student Services, Christina Ryan, and Derek Munyon, our Assistant Director of Student Services, Elementary, just to discuss the amended proposed policy that we've worked with our attorney just to meet the new regulations that are due by August 17th of this year. So we kept it simple to a few slides.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So tonight, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the higher level updates to the physical restraint laws that govern seclusion and also timeout in Massachusetts public schools. So to start, probably makes sense to talk a little bit about the 2016 definitions of each of these terms so that we can consider them in how they are defined here in 2025. So previously, we've had timeout, seclusion, and physical restraint have all been defined in those laws previously. Timeout was previously defined as a behavioral support strategy in which a student is separated from learning for the purposes of calming. Essentially, you have to have a view of the student at all time, and it's considered timeout. Seclusion was something that was separate. Seclusion was essentially, it's prohibited, it was prohibited, it still is. We'll talk about emergency usage soon, but essentially seclusion was prohibited, and essentially that criteria was only met if a student was secluded and you did not have visibility of that student and you were unable to assist them were they to need some help. So based on these definitions, these updates have been incorporated into the new amendments here, and I'll just talk a little bit about some of that here. So those are the old definitions. The new definitions here, when we talk about timeout and seclusion, so seclusion, the definition has been updated to align more closely with the definition used by OCR for data collection. And so essentially, where previously you wouldn't be considered to be secluding a child if you were with them in a room separate from everyone, now the new definition proposes that you can still be with someone. If you're separating a child from the learning environment and it's say you and said child, that now would qualify under what is considered to be seclusion. So there's that change there. That's a big change in the requirements, and I'll talk a little bit next about some of the emergency circumstances in which they're allowing seclusion. So seclusion is still prohibited. Essentially, I should mention that for timeout, one of the things that I had reorganized some of these, so I apologize, I might go a little out of order here. Timeout was updated to include in an unlocked setting from which the student is permitted to leave. Previously, that was not a condition when you discussed timeout. Essentially, you could be engaging in what is now considered seclusion previously under the title of timeout. So the attempt is to separate out the two and make it clear that if you're trying to have a student utilize a behavioral strategy for calming, they need to have the opportunity to leave. We cannot stop them from leaving. They cannot be, blocked from leaving. They essentially need to have access to that exit from that area. So that separates timeout from seclusion. Seclusion now essentially is, as I had stated previously, when you have a student alone in the space and there's no other students, purposes to obviously ensure that the student is safe, but it just is qualified differently now. And so there are a lot of important pieces that need to be in place that I'll just give an overview of as far as what is required. These things were not previously required for timeout procedures, so it's important to highlight some of the things that DESE is recommending here as far as ways to ensure that we're not just using this as a first response to students. So the big piece is that it's a last resort. It's always a last resort, right? It's not something that can be written into behavior plans. It's not something that you can just recommend for a student. It is an absolute last resort. And the definition that they use is that there needs to be an imminent threat of assault or imminent risk of serious physical harm. And so there has to be reason for you to believe that that criteria is in fact possible in that moment. The other piece is that the student has to be non-responsive to de-escalation attempts. You can't just engage in seclusion or seclude a child without attempting to first engage in some level of de-escalation. So verbal de-escalation is a critical component when you're working with students that might be in a heightened state. Any of us, when we're having a difficult time, if someone comes to us and attempts to work through something with us and it's not done in a manner that is matching us where we're at and supporting us, it can obviously go in a different direction. So there does have to be some level of engagement in crisis de-escalation. So if you have that documentation that other interventions have failed, that piece then comes into play. There has to be a documented history of repeatedly causing self-injury and or injury to staff. So this is critical. There has to be some level of documentation that the student has a history of engaging in similar behaviors that might pose a threat of imminent harm. So this is not just something that can be utilized on a student that maybe is having a difficult day or that has never displayed any behavior similar to this previously. The next piece up is that there needs to be documentation from a licensed mental health professional that there is psychological or behavioral justification for the use. And again, this is a piece in trying to address there are obviously clear outcomes related to trauma, and this can be a very high intense situation. So it's important for there to be documentation from a licensed mental health professional. So that's a really big one right there. There needs to be some level of documentation from a licensed physician in addition to that. So indicating that there are no medical limitations that a student might experience in, say, a seclusion environment. So that piece is also in there. And as I had mentioned previously, a staff member needs to be continuously and actively monitoring the student at all times. So we always have to have eyes on the student. We always have to be aware of where the needs are. In those situations, it's never be a one adult situation. It'll be multiple adults for multiple purposes of ensuring that students are okay, staff are okay, and that everyone is in as safe as you can be in a very challenging situation. And lastly, just looking at, once a student is calm and they're no longer engaging in that behavior that led to the threat of potential imminent harm, it has to cease to continue. Essentially, you can't continue on with secluding someone because maybe a feeling or not thinking that a student is ready to come back. If a student is showing that they're in a place where they are calm and they are no longer engaging in that unsafe behavior, it has to cease. So there's quite a bit of things that need to be in place ultimately for someone to utilize this emergency seclusion based on the new amendments as written. And then also just the timeout rooms, they added some more information there. It used to be that they were clean and safe essentially, and now they need to be appropriately sized based on the size of the student, properly maintained, ventilated, code compliant, and consistent with any other DESE guidance. So that is a summary of the overview of the updates, or that's the overview of the updates essentially. DESE does have a doc essentially summarizing all these updates, and they'll go into effect in around August, I believe, of this year. Yep, so not currently in place, but they will be in place for the start of the new year.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hi.
So I just have a few questions.
Absolutely.
So they need a plan in place by August,
Yeah.
not necessarily this plan.
Correct. There needs to be a plan. There needs to be a plan in place by August to address based upon the information within the legislation that presented before us.
And the plan has to address seclusion and timeout?
Yep, and physical restraint, so they're all bundled under a similar law.
Okay, so I just want to ask,
Yeah.
do you know what the size of this area is? And like, where would they be? Are they part inside of a classroom? Are they separate from a classroom?
Yep, so for the seclusion piece, that's a good question. So they do attempt to clarify the use of, say, a classroom setting versus, a setting that's entirely separate. Typically, the setting is separate from the classroom setting and would typically be some, they don't give specific dimensions. They just give that it needs to be appropriately sized for the student's age. I would say that in my experience, it's typically a potentially, spaces that were previously an office or adjacent to a classroom, so not very large, but not small. So there aren't specific dimensions that are listed. It's just attributed to the size of the student, the way that it's written.
Would there be windows in this area? Could they see out as someone sees in?
Yep, that's a good question. So depending on the way that they are set up, there needs to be a sight line at all times. So if there is, say, a closed door, there needs to be windows in order to be able to see a student. There are situations in which there isn't a door for safety purposes, and maybe there is someone that stands at the door that just waits until someone is calm. So it really is dependent upon the needs of the student.
And there would only be one student at a time?
Yes.
With it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the amount of adults necessary,
Yep.
as
Absolutely.
you said.
There would be at least, I mean, in a situation like that, there needs to be at least multiple adults just to ensure the safety of the kids and also the adults and make sure that reporting is accurate.
And what's in this room?
What's in the room?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, so typically it needs to be free of mostly everything.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the student is having a significant challenging time.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, you could have often hard surfaces can be padded.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure that there are no electrical outlets, things like that, anything unsafe that would potentially, that a student could harm themselves.
So you mentioned training for the staff.
Yep.
Currently, what
Yeah.
kind of safety training happens for educators? And then is it
Yeah.
everybody or select few?
Sure. So we currently utilize Safety Care by PBS, and so that satisfies the criteria as laid out by the state. We typically do that at the beginning of the year. And we'll, for new providers, you need to be certified in the full training, which is typically 2 full days, and then for recertification, it's 1 full day.
And so who would get that?
Yep. So typically within the schools, we try to prioritize staff that are working within some of our programs where students might require some more consistent support from adults. We do try to get at least a few adults from each building safety care trained to ensure that there's someone in each building or a few adults in each building that are certified should something occur. And it's not just for the physical restraint piece, but also the verbal de-escalation.
Mm. So the thing about the mental health
Yeah.
professional that recommends that this
Yep.
is okay, so how does that work with a child that is having, do you contact someone after several outbursts?
Yep, that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's something we're definitely still looking at and working on and trying to figure out like how it's written, what the procedure, how that will work, right? Because ultimately there needs to be consent from a doctor, consent from a mental health professional, and in speaking with our attorneys, how do we get that information? How do we get that consent? How do we reach out to parents, right? To try to, again, but just to try to be proactive where this is something that could potentially come up, just thinking about students and their individualized needs. So it's not something that we take lightly, not something that I would say, even I see all that frequently, but it's definitely something that in trying to prepare to meet the needs of some students, we would have to figure out how to proactively do that with parents.
Right, so if that can't be in an IEP, it's not something that can be predicted,
Correct. Yep.
So I don't see how that works.
Yeah, so it has to be essentially a last resort. That's the way to ensure that it's a last resort, right? If it's not in an IEP, essentially we can't then say, we can't then utilize it as a first resort. So it truly needs to be a very extraordinary situation in which there was that threat of physical harm, and I believe that's a way for the state to ensure that, rightfully so, that this isn't something that's lightly used.
Could I do the chair?
Yep.
It's okay. Just to be very clear that
Sure.
we have an existing policy, JKAA.
Yep.
And what we're proposing for first read is the recommended adjustments that meet the regulations. And actually, we had a version that came to us through the School Committee Association, but we've gone with the version through our attorney that you've worked very closely with over a period of time. Because all districts have seen this coming, because this, I think, was approved right around December, the start of the year. So we also know with the first read, obviously it's an opportunity to gather information, and there's a whole set of procedures that come into play with this that have come from the attorney that we definitely can share. So just want to make sure, like, the clear highlights of the, you covered the highlights that come from the adjustment with the new regulations.
Yep, covered the highlights and happy to share. I got them right from the guidance from DESE, essentially, just to ensure that everything was in line with the most recent updates. But there is a nice summary that they have that just outlines all of the previous, or all of the changes to what was the 2016 initial restraint and seclusion and timeout requirements.
Mr. Chair. Okay. At the beginning, we had something from public comment suggested going against this.
Sure.
Can you tell us what some of the, and by no means am I trying to spur a debate from the audience or anything, but what I'm trying to see is what are some of the potential hot buttons here that might get a visceral response from people?
Yeah, I think that obviously anytime you talk about utilizing something defined as seclusion, right, and you're talking about removing kids from a their learning environment and essentially separating them in order to keep them safe. The intentions are obviously to keep them safe, but I absolutely could see where, as a for parents, that's concerning. And the thing that I look at this, there is the existing policy in place. I feel like the previously defined timeout versus seclusion allowed a lot more gray area in terms of what is and isn't timeout versus seclusion, and I at least see this as a step in the right direction to attempt to make it, ensure that we are taking the necessary steps before we remove a student from a classroom and determine that they aren't able to be around their peers because they're unsafe based on their behavior. So I can absolutely see where that would be a concern for any parent. I think it's about trying to find a way to ensure that we're responsibly ensuring the safety of all of our students and working with parents to try to figure out how we can best do that based on what we have in front of us.
Great. And from a student services perspective, you guys support this as written. Is that correct?
I think it's, again, we have the existing law that's in place, and so essentially these are amendments to that. And so I feel as though to say it's a step in the right direction in terms of trying to ensure that this isn't something that's used lightly.
Got it. Thank you.
Can a family opt out of this ever being part of their students?
So that, again, when you look at the emergency seclusion piece, I mean, if you're unable to, the way I read it right now, and we can certainly look at this, but the way I read it is that if someone if we don't have that consent that's required, that's not something that we can utilize to ensure students, to try to ensure safety in that moment. So that's the way that I read it currently, and I believe our attorneys have felt the same. But essentially, if you don't have all of those key components in place, it's not something, even though it's listed as emergency, you still can't use it in that moment. So, yeah.
Derek and I did apply for a grant from the state, and we did receive that grant specifically to utilize for this purpose. And so what we're doing now is really coming up with, assuming this will be approved, a protocol that we will really work with families and staff to make sure that this is really comprehensive, but also that we have a procedure in place before those issues arise, because we know that this is going to be a huge change for staff and families.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around this, and Josh alluded to, comments from Dr. Bolda, DeFilippo. I guess my question to you is, this applies to all students, right? This isn't just about, you know, the special needs or students. A situation happens,
Yeah.
and the attempt to restrain. I'm thinking outside of the box. If there's a physical incident within the school, like how would this apply? How, you know, do you let someone be dysregulated until you get a parent on the phone?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or else you evacuate the room? Isn't that seclusion in and of itself?
Yeah.
I'm thinking worst case, not worst case, I'm thinking realistic scenarios of how do you keep everyone safe
Yep.
from any student who is having an episode if you can't do anything. I mean, I think some guidance has to be there, and based on what you said, an emergency would still require some kind of notification. So I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah.
Because
so it applies to the emergency seclusion piece as far as removing a student to a space where, you know, it's either you and them or just them essentially, and not allowing them to leave. It is not, you know, it doesn't impact the physical restraint definitions and requirements as the way it's written anytime, and or any school resource officer from being able to, you know, again, do their duty. So this is more around the emergency seclusion piece. There's certainly scenarios such as that absolutely need to be looked at and looked at further, so we can figure out, again, how are we responding in these situations? How are we proactive, but how are we also responding when there is that moment where maybe, you know, we were as proactive as we could be in that moment, but something still occurred. So I do think that is a little bit of that area that we definitely are still working on. The you know, what is the real life everyday impact of something like this, and how do we ensure that we're supporting students, you know, supporting all students, essentially.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, because I don't see it here, is there any trigger for automatic removal if there's physical contact? Like we're talking about that person's safety.
Yeah.
They could trying to injure themselves.
So
or
yeah,
trying to injure someone else.
there's nothing that ultimately there are, you know, we have our school discipline laws that do exist as far as when you talk about it. Obviously, when you're talking about students with IEPs, there are very specific set of criteria that are also considered when we talk about school discipline. But when you talk about a very intense situation where maybe a student is unsafe and unable to be within the school building, there are things that are available to building administrators to ensure that that student gets what they need, and to ensure that all other students within, or that, you know, others within the building are also safe. So those things are not impacted by this. There are those situations where if something, you know, did lead to an emergency situation and someone had to make that decision, that still is available in those moments. So this doesn't impact that.
Okay, and sorry, and just one more. I mean, so this is really addressing everyday scenarios within a classroom to avoid a student regularly being put in isolation as a first or second resort without getting everything that they need.
The way I read it, the intent is to really, there's obviously, it's a great concern, the use of any sort of physical, you know, engagement with a student that you're trying to build a relationship with and teach and, you know, support. And so the goal here, I would assume, would be to limit that piece, because it is something that is a concern throughout, you know, not just Massachusetts, but throughout the nation, and that physical restraint can sometimes be over relied on, and it's not something that should be utilized for things like non-compliance or not following directions or breaking something or things like that. And so it's a combination of, you know, we have to really, really define what is true imminent threat, right? Everyone's definition looks a little bit different, and so the state is really trying to press upon us that this has to be a very significant situation based on the facts available to us, that there is concern that that child and or somebody else is really going to be hurt. Not, you know, you don't want to see someone obviously doing some minor behavior and then ending up in a physical restraint or in a seclusion situation. So that, as a, you know, as a district, our job is obviously to, with our training and with our staff, to ensure that we're really defining what, if anything, does cross a threshold as defined by the state here.
I know this is, we're not voting on this today, obviously, it's a first reading, but I still have to go back to, in your interpretation of what the doctor said earlier of don't do it, ignore it. I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, my concern is that the way that the definitions are written right now, the way that seclusion and timeout definitions are written in the current legislation allows for a lot of gray areas. Students could technically be what is now considered secluded as long as an adult is directly next to them, right? It doesn't meet the criteria because I can see them. And so my concern is that if we continue with that definition or that understanding of what seclusion is, it's much, there's less protections involved for students. And I do think that I absolutely see the concern. I guess my thought is that this exists and we already have this as a policy. And so these are amendments that are meant to try to make this more difficult for us to utilize on purpose. And so my understanding of that leads me to say that I would rather see students be, almost better protected in that moment than us have this sort of ambiguous definition where you can technically engage in seclusion but call it timeout, and the reporting requirements are also different. So there's a lot of things in there that obviously I agree. I absolutely agree with Dr. DeFilippo on we need to be doing everything we can to be proactive and working with students and working with families and making sure that this is something that we are rarely using. And I think that's done through communication and trying to build plans that work proactively based on kids' needs, meeting them where they're at, and really ensuring that we are its very last resort.
So I would, to feel more comfortable with what you're really trying to get at here, I feel like I would need to see the training that you would want to present to your staff. To fully understand, and to see that they would then understand that this is a almost never situation. Is that something you're already in the process of creating?
With the training?
Training for staff.
Yeah, the training.
And families, I would think.
Yep, the training itself already exists, so it's something that we have that we utilize each year. So essentially I and myself and three others in the district are all certified trainers in safety care, and essentially they train us through safety care, and then we're responsible for training our staff in district. And so that's the model that
What training I mean is beyond safety care. How do you help people discern that it's elevated to the, and then what to do to avoid it? I know that's part of safety care.
Yeah, sure.
But it sounds like now where there'll be more levels within.
Absolutely.
So how are we going to address that?
Yeah, so typically within the safety care training itself, there's room for us to incorporate our own state, because they're international. They are often, we have room within there to incorporate our own state-specific requirements with our staff, and we often take a good amount of our time, especially on day one, to really review those state requirements and talk about the changes and talk about the expectations as far as, we often in safety care talk about, disruptive versus dangerous versus very dangerous behavior. And I find that something like that goes right in line with what the state is talking about here. You never engage in physical restraint and or any other type of seclusion for someone that's engaging in disruptive behavior. It's disruptive, sure, but it's not something that rises to that level. And then we talk about dangerous behaviors that are, again, maybe a little bit dangerous, but not to the extent where serious physical or imminent harm. And then you have these very dangerous behaviors. And we'll talk about scenarios in which there are very dangerous behaviors. How do you respond? How do you support the student? And what are you doing in that moment? And sometimes it's as, I don't want to say simple, but it's as, stepping back, right? And sometimes students do need space in those moments. And I think oftentimes the first instinct is to get in there and help, but if they are in a safe space and we're able to give space and really think about how to best then move in and support a student after that, it's about thinking of all those things and not feeling like there always needs to be this immediate response unless there's, again, imminent physical harm.
Through the chair. Unfortunately, we're having this conversation, but fortunately, we're having this conversation because if this means that our policies are tighter and better, then that's a good thing. Unfortunately, I've seen very dangerous behaviors in school, and I've been a part of that. And to Julie's point, it's very traumatizing to the student and staff, quite honestly, right? It's very traumatizing. But fortunately, we have some of these strategies in place to keep those students safe. To parrot what Beth said, I hope our training is very tight on this. Because a well-trained staff stops a lot of unnecessary things from happening.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't want something, obviously, that's very small or lower level or disruptive, right, to then rise to very dangerous when it could have been dealt with by, verbal de-escalation tactics and ensuring that you're, responding accordingly. We don't want to, if a student, we have to ensure that they talk in safety care about the steps essentially from, elevated to calm. And so our job at all times is to look at the situation and determine if we have a student that's escalated, what are the possible outcomes here and how do we get them back down to calm? Because nobody is going to be available, when they're escalated. And so it's our job to make sure that we get students back down to an area in which they are accessible and we can work with them and try to problem solve and build from there. So that is our number one goal at all times, is to how do we get back down here to calm to ensure that students feel supported and that we can try to move forward and proactively support them.
Thank you.
Sure.
To the chair. So if there's anything, obviously for first read gives an opportunity for any feedback, dialogue, comments. So if there's any information that would be helpful, just to show, obviously the legislation is in place and we have to meet the regulations. So if there's a chart maybe that can show the current policy versus the new policy and the specific differences, things of that nature, I'm happy to share, and certainly, whatever may come to mind. So we have an opportunity to present more information just to make sure that we're in compliance, but also safe for our students and staff and families.
So do we have a motion for a first read of an amendment to policy JAAA?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, sorry, any discussion? Sorry, pardon.
So because I'm new at this.
Sure.
So for the first read, what comes next? The next month? That's the final decision, or?
Yes, the second read would be the final accept the policy, or if at that point, not accept it. And we're looking from a strategic standpoint, that's why you have that separation to gather information, to have further dialogue. If we need to bring in more information, we're happy to provide that. So that gives a buffer, any public comment, any public inquiries, we can answer any of that or address that at the meeting. And just know that we do not have a meeting in July. Our next meeting would be in August. We just want to make sure that our policy matches what's required. And then there is a whole set of procedures and a whole piece of that is still they're working through. And I know that's important. Obviously, we have that, and we're happy to share that through our attorney. In addition, as Christina said, there's a lot of grant money we've received. Fortunately, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're doing what is best for all. So that gives us a buffer of time for the second read.
For the second read. Thank you.
I'd like to suggest that because this is such a serious issue, and we have a very active CPAC, I'd like to make sure that we call them in as partners on this, as far as we can, their voice is important in this, and they should have some input. We should hear that and give weight to it. So I'd like to put that out there.
Is there any more discussion? All right, let's bring it to a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain.
So it's 4-0-1, so it passes for a first reading. Thank you both. Thank you. Appreciate it. And next we'll move on to item E in new business, superintendent evaluation updates.
Thank you, Chair. We're getting to that time of year where the superintendent evaluation, just like all of our admin and teacher evaluations. So we did talk about in February strategic plan updates and my goal updates. Right now I'm working on end of year goals, although we're not finished yet. But I do want to provide enough time to review the goals, to provide, I'll provide the evidence. What I've done in the past is, in May, what I'm doing right now is I'm linking up my goals with a Google Doc that just basically lists everything that connects to that. And then certainly be able to turn that into sooner than later, with the goal that by the June meeting that there's an opportunity for a final summative eval that you'll put together. Then my evaluation is the only one that's public, so it gives an opportunity for you to discuss the evaluation as you see fit, and then certainly whatever the outcome is, adopt and vote on that for my final evaluation. So, I know that, and I'm open for any discussion to streamline the process. It's a little cumbersome with the actual DESI document for the evaluation because the chair is responsible for taking all of yours and coming up with the final report. If it was helpful last time by putting in the Google Doc and all the links that are specific, I'm happy to do that and add a narrative as I think we did last year. I'm open to any suggestions to streamline the process, provide information that would be helpful.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, the only suggestion I would have is just to do exactly what you said, Dan. I think last year it was great to have the links to see what in your source of proof of like what you did for each item. It made the process a lot easier last year.
Can we expect those links tomorrow?
If that is the wish of the former chair.
When would be an appropriate time for you to have them?
I'd like to have them by, actually, I'm kind of halfway done.
Okay.
So I'd like at least another week or so to complete that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to item F, annual review of school attorney recommendation.
Just through the chair, if I may,
Sure.
Obviously the school district attorney serves at the will of the school committee. You granted me the opportunity to utilize the attorney for official district business. So we're at the point, I think there's two options. One is retain the current counsel. Please keep in mind that we've had the same counsel for, well, predates myself. There's been a consolidation as Roseanne DePietro has retired. And she was the one I worked directly with, and certainly can utilize her as a consultant. There are other members of the firm that we use. For example, our HR uses an attorney separate. Attorney Gonzalez Kelly is now the lead attorney for the firm. So I've communicated with her recently. We have questions recently about, in terms of school safety, in terms of what's a staff obligation, up until we have things ranging. I'm going to reach out about AI and usage of in evaluations. So I'm confident utilizing, but I also know that at different times, there's always an opportunity if the committee so desires for review. My recommendation would be to utilize either the budget or policy subcommittee to assist and work together and just evaluate the performance, look at the criteria, if they've been receptive and responsive to what we need, success in litigation, and certainly familiarity with DESI regulations. The fees, how does that match up, as well as policy alignment to our goals. So if the committee so desires, they go in that direction, I would then recommend utilizing either subcommittee to do that work and bring back a recommendation by the June meeting. If that's possible, it might not be, because there are a number of firms out there that represent school committees. And I will tell you that Kelly Gonzalez works directly with the association, the Superintendent's Association, as well as, I know she works with the School Committee Association. But that in any way does not mean that if the committee desires a review, just because sometimes it's not bad to take a review if you've been with somebody for a while, that either does one of two things. One, it affirms like great service and we're happy, or there are other options out there.
Is there any discussion or any questions through the chair? Absolutely.
Dr. Bauer, what's your assessment of the current relationship with our law firm and their performance?
So, obviously, working closely with Roseanne through our negotiations, which was a huge thing, and certainly with change in policies, any personnel issues, and like any district, we've had our share of items. Roseanne was very receptive and responsive, and I've tried not to text her too much over the weekend if necessary, but when an emergency comes up, she was always there. And I'm working mostly with Kelly Gonzalez, who's the principal chair, and she's been receptive. I haven't worked with her quite as long, to be honest with you. In terms of the fees and such, I have not compared or priced out, just because we've had this firm for so long. But I do know, and I know Kelly works directly with the associates. I've seen her presentations. So at the end of the day, I don't have enough of a relationship with her. I haven't seen a change in the firm in terms of responsiveness, because we reached out on a few things. She's gotten back to us. And actually Roseanne did too, although I know she's retired, I still texted her anyway. So to answer your question, Mr. Lopes, I have not seen a change, but certainly it's just like anything else, is it worth taking a look at another perspective and go with that.
Mr. Chair, the one thing that I would just raise is they are located on the South Shore, I believe, like in Weymouth or something.
Yes, South Shore.
Yeah, so I mean, it might be an appropriate time to, just given the fact that we are changing an attorney, to take a look and see if I know it's kind of niche what they do, but if there is somebody closer to home that we might be able to, that it might have a different fee structure or whatever the situation is, maybe we do investigate that, somebody on the North Shore.
If I through the chair?
Absolutely.
So with that, if there's a recommendation to review, one of the things I would do is reach into the North Shore Roundtable, 17 districts, and see who they're utilizing. That's always a great step, and just get firsthand from the superintendents, and certainly see if there are people more locally, or what their experience has been with other firms.
Yeah,
as well.
and I have no gripe with the work that they've done. I'm just saying, like, if it's up for review, we might as well take a look. That'll be my recommendation. Thank you.
Does it just take a recommendation or a motion?
This serves at the will of the committee, a recommendation, my opinion, would be a vote for a review. Or if you want to pause the actual, you could do one of two things, I guess. You could certainly go through a formal vote just to get that public, that going through a vote to conduct a review, and then charge bringing back the results at the next meeting. Or certainly can just right here refrain and just say do a review. But I would recommend either way utilizing the subcommittee to help. I don't think I answered your question very well.
You did fine. I'd like to, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we review our legal counsel and utilize whichever committee the superintendent deems most appropriate to do that.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I guess my first question would be, how much time would you need to do this assessment? Because I don't think it's something that can be done lightly, and I'm not sure if it's something that can be accomplished in 30 days. So, I mean, these contracts are typically, are they year to year, or are they multi-year?
To the chair, yes, they're yearly, yes.
And when is this contract up?
I believe it's at the end of the school year, but to your point, to answer that, my opinion would be certainly this is something you don't take lightly, because this is the 3 o'clock in the morning call when something severe happens and you need sound legal advice. You asked me the earlier question, and that's why I wanted to really say that, you know, Kelly's works directly with the association. So, however, with a window to look at it, my assessment would be work with the subcommittee. If we feel that we're not in good traction by June, you know, certainly could look at I'll figure out the contract to see if there's a window, and then if we need more time, you know, get by August. But I could report that out to you.
No, that'll be great, because that's my only concern is, I mean, here we are at the end of the year with the contract imminent. The last thing we'd want is a disruption, but you know, knowing that it's a year of an evaluation, it would be something that I would be more comfortable with. If we're comfortable and the fees are, you know, reasonable, let's continue another year, and because this is something that I just don't think you can do in 30 days.
Gabe's point's well taken, but is it worth taking that look now to get that base? And if we do decide to go through the year, that will allow us to evaluate them based on what we just gleaned.
I absolutely think we should start a review now.
Yeah.
I just don't think we should make a final decision in 30 days.
Possibly, if the contract expires, maybe they would take us on a month-to-month basis as well. If that could be a possibility, I'd imagine. I don't think anybody's turning away business.
It's rolling, correct?
Right. Yeah. So maybe that's a situation that if we continue to do it, and then maybe we get it in August, and then we, you know, maybe after a couple months of evaluation, we're able to make a decision at that point. But we're in, you know, we're still in that. We're still covered legally.
Through the chair. Just that as an example, when we changed our special education attorney in my first year, and the process was very simple. So there was basically just, we were able to walk out. There was no real true contract. It was just a verbal agreement that we would work with that firm. So I did have to receive a note from the school committee that we're moving to a new attorney. So I don't want to make assumptions, but would be very clear on like what it would take to actually, if the recommendation is to change, and the time frame for sure.
Any more discussion? So we have a motion and a second for the annual review of the school attorney recommendation for review. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? And it passes. Move on to 6. Item A is minutes. Mr. Secretary.
I move to approve and release the minutes from the April 13th, 2026 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Give me a second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's moved. Item B, consent agenda. Motion to approve the personnel and surplus memos and fundraising requests. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Oh,
Second.
Yeah. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And item C, communications. Is there any communications from any of the legislation? That's also D.
Through the chair for legislation, if I may.
Absolutely.
We've been in contact with Representative Sally Cairns, who, you know, through the last Danvers Care meeting, they discussed the legislation, proposed legislation for a bell-to-bell cell phone ban, as well as social media. I did not attend the meeting, but our principal, Alan Strauss, did. And Principal Strauss and myself, it's not that we don't support a bell-to-bell ban if that is formally passed. As I understand it, went through the Senate, and some provisions were rejected, so it's going to go to committee. We just want to be very clear in terms of the implementation, cost, and all the logistics. The timing for summer implementation is not easy. And we just want to be very clear. And again, I want to be clear that we're not saying we don't support this, but the current policy that we're utilizing at the high school has been very successful. So we just want to be prepared as much. So she is coming to meet with us tomorrow at 11:45. I'm happy to report out to you that meeting. She's very open and wants to hear our feedback. So I just want the committee to know that. That's coming up tomorrow.
Is there anything from any of the subcommittees?
I have Danvers Cares.
Thank you.
I was able to actually jump in the last meeting. I was on my prep period. 5/20 of this month is the Light the Night Purple event. It's at 6:30 at the library. So anyone who is interested, please attend. On 5/27, they're actually doing a walk audit with, I can't think of the gentleman's name from the accessibility, who heads up the accessibility committee. JD Mars, thank you. They're doing a walk audit at 5:30 at Pope's Landing, weather permitting. If the weather is not great, they're going to meet at the senior center for a pre-walk briefing. So for all the people that are interested in the accessibility issue, please attend that. And Danvers Kids is excited to be giving out 2 scholarships at graduation. So. They did talk a lot about the cell phone policy.
Through the chair.
Absolutely.
Our policy and equity subcommittees will meet. The timing is difficult because it was originally scheduled for next Monday. However, that is town meeting, so we need to reschedule those subcommittees. Ideally, it was on the 20th, but that's Light the Night Purple. So both those will be virtual, so I may need to change that again, just to let you know. And then our safety committee meets next Monday, the last meeting of the year, our district safety committee. And I'm happy to bring an update at the next school committee meeting. We've covered a lot of safety items, and I think a lot of good work I'd like to share with the committee.
Okay. Is there anything else from any of the subcommittees? All right.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Danvers, our next meeting will be Monday, June 8th